Well, well, well. Back for another Seanversation. Today with Ben Cardoza. Um, so I've been starting a lot of these with a thing that I call divulgences. And a lot of the people that I've been asking to come in who are just, as I've said a number of times before, the weird way I've lived my life the past 25 years, I've been exposed to some of the most interesting people, I think, walking this planet. I've been starting by saying things that I may have that I don't want to just kind of like feed out little by little, like I'm blown away by your playing. Like you're one of the most insightful musicians I get it all out of the way up front so they know right where we stand and then we just have a conversation. My divulgence for you is we just met recently.
Yeah.
I don't know a heck of a lot about you, but everything I know of you is super interesting. You are a creator of a podcast, writer, performer, uh, like everything of the podcast is you, and I absolutely adore it. A Long Walk podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
You entered my periphery because of an artist that I'm close to. Paul Justin Hollingsworth is a writer and performer in Cursed on Earth, the band that I'm in. He also does a huge amount of artwork for me in any number of things, whether it's Seacoast Entertainer. He does all of Cursed on Earth's artwork. He does for a lot of other people as well, and he's professionally an artist as well.
Yeah.
But after that, the name A Long Walk podcast, after seeing that, Mark Michael Adams, who I adore Mark. His podcast actually comes out tomorrow morning. He's the feature. So when this comes out in August or so,
Yep.
this will be old news. But he's a voice on your podcast.
Yes, he is.
And I thought, well, I'm getting hit from multiple sides. I don't know who this Ben Cardoza dude is, but I'd like to find out. So I invited you in, and here we are.
Yeah.
That's the divulgence. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
So curiosity right out of the gate. We can get into your background, tell your story. If I'm talking too much, interrupt. This is yours. Where did A Long Walk podcast come from, first and foremost?
Yeah, sure.
And talk to me about what, like, I'm fascinated with the whole world. It's not just a podcast. Like, it's a whole production,
Yeah.
seasons and everything.
Yeah. It started out, I'd say, mid to late 2019 as a concept for a short story, actually.
Okay, now it's making sense.
So maybe the overall arcing story might have been a little different back then as an early concept, but generally it was the same idea. You know, you have a space pod that crash lands marooned on a desert planet and has to kind of find a way to survive while also simultaneously remembering how he got to that place. So you have sort of two timelines running concurrently, because in any kind of form, I feel like just a pilot trying to survive, it could be a little monotonous. And then somebody came up with the idea, well, maybe you should do this as a podcast. At the time, I had understand the idea of radio drama podcast rather than, this kind of venue or format. And I was like, oh, yeah, maybe. Should I read it as a story? And he said, well, why don't you make it like an actual production? And I had no idea what they meant. So they sent me a link to another podcast, which I can't think of the name of at the moment, and it was a whole production, radio drama style. You had different characters being played by different actors, and there's a whole production behind it. I said, oh, that's interesting. So around then, maybe early 2020, I started noodling with the idea of doing it in the format that it is now. And many years later, I was able to release it, which is as of last year.
Okay.
But it's kind of a long road.
It seems like it would have been.
Yeah.
Because this isn't something that you have a team of writers, because a team of writers costs money.
Yes.
And a production team, unless I sparingly use this word, unless you're blessed like I am to have a couple of people who,
Sure.
a few people who get involved because they want to help build something for the community, then you typically have to pay all of these people.
Yeah.
And what you've made has all of those things kind of ironed out. And is that all on you?
I'd say 95%
It's
yes.
incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, so when I was starting to get into the idea of making this a full drama podcast, it was, well, okay, now I've done script writing in the past,
Okay.
so nothing, that ever made it anywhere, but I did it in college.
You were familiar with it
I'm
then.
familiar with the format of script writing, and it's easier for a podcast, but it's a lot less because you don't have to do stage direction.
You get more than one take at it.
Yeah, that's also true. But yeah, there's not a sea of writers. It's just me.
Yeah.
My background, without getting into my background too much, is more in creative writing than anything else. So that was not too hard. So it was just battening down and really just doing it. Then it was finding who did I want to do this with. So a lot of the people that I was starting to get involved with, including the person that kind of suggested it in the first place, Laura Harper Lake, um, was like, well, why don't we see who might want to do this? And a lot of the people that I went to college with seemed like good candidates, and then people who know people, because it was more of a case of now we're getting into good old COVID times,
Yeah.
and why don't we do this as a way to collaborate creatively, and we can do it without being in the same room as each other, because
Voice acting.
voice acting,
Yeah.
exactly. And then a lot of voice acting gigs professionally even happen that way, where people would, line their closets with felt and
Oh
just
yeah.
and record. So I had people, some of which already had recording equipment, and they could send me dialogue in small spurts. I can test it, and then I taught myself how to use FL Studio, which is like the predecessor of Fruity Loops.
Okay.
So I bought it, and I just taught myself how to really figure it out, and a couple of years of really just kind of going back and forth, really testing out um, Foley effects and purchasing even sound effects, doing careful recordings of things, and then just sort of mixing everyone's uniquely recorded dialogues to try to match them up, especially when people are having conversations with each other. And
Yeah.
I've got two different sound files, and I'm cutting one line at a time.
Yeah. And
And
it's all same room in your mind.
yes,
It needs to sound like it's same room.
yeah,
Yeah.
and even in the first episode, I will admit there are some parts where it's not quite even because we hadn't quite figured out all the kinks yet. And again, it's such a not hapdash, but shoestring production,
Yeah.
and it took me a little while to kind of iron that out. And that was also how I thought of it. Was my idea was if you could watch a really good movie and close your eyes, that's what this would be, at least to me.
Yeah.
So the sound production became almost one of the most important things. And looking back at the first episode, I could see the project time that I'd spent on it. It was like 20 hours. Um, and that was over a period of a couple of years, obviously just kind of, doing little bits and pieces here and there, adjustments, and then obviously just the actual pure work of it.
Yeah. Because you have a full-time job as well.
Yes.
This is not, you're not independently wealthy and you sit around having a good time making this production because it's a passion project, and you sit at Starbucks every morning and you do your typing and then you go home and you read your stuff.
If only, yeah.
It's not that. But that's the thing, partly, and I hope you don't take offense to this. You seem like a very realized person.
Yes.
Part of the thing that has been drawing me towards things for years is authenticity, where everything is vastly overproduced and seems entirely calculated. There's a bit of a human element that lacks everywhere you are, whether it's overprocessed pop music or movies, putting on sometimes a costume and then standing in front of a green screen.
Yeah.
And you do 1,000 different takes of the same stupid thing, and then basically the magic is the editors.
Yeah.
They're literal magic beings who somehow go through 45,000 hours worth of stuff and then, in their mind, crap out a thing that people will pay billions and billions of dollars for.
Correct. I mean, they do say that movies are made twice. It's, in filming and in the editing room.
in the editing room.
Yeah.
So you're doing all of that editing yourself.
Yes.
You're not a professional editor whereby you can just fall into that, zone mode where you're just cranking through stuff. It's not that it's all tedious, but it all has your fingerprints on it,
It does.
which that is authentic.
Thank you.
The pinnacle of authenticity I think you can often hear, and it sounds like a lack of high production quality. As soon as I hear that, I immediately zone in, and I encourage everybody breaking that fourth wall, find authentic things. Finding authentic things is where you find all of that actual human connection.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the vast majority of what you encounter in your life is product.
Yeah.
It's made specifically to sell to you. Whereas art is not necessarily supposed to be that. Art, we were just talking about before we started, the great artists who do not realize what they are until long after they're dead.
Yes.
So they'll never know.
Same here.
So, yeah. And I'm not trying to put you in that.
No.
I don't want to impede the creative process by being like, well, you now need to live up to Van Gogh. So, get on it.
I'll cut that ear off.
Yeah, get right on that.
But no, and I agree. What was pretty cool was after I had started releasing episodes, and it wasn't just a small test audience listening, a lot of people were really impressed and complimentary on the sound design and a lot of different aspects of it. And I honestly, I was doing it more for me than anybody else.
How do you mean by that?
The idea that I can feel the world, I can hear it, I can not think about anything else, and I can just envelop myself in a soundscape, which doesn't become a soundscape anymore. It just becomes an environment. And again, it's that idea of overproduction and things that almost seem like a human hand didn't touch it. There's a warmth to something that's been designed in such a way. And again, I know that people digest podcasts many different ways, in their cars, on their phones. Very few people listen to it on nice speakers, sitting down in in a room.
Sure.
And I think it was Donald Fagen, half of Steely Dan, who at some point in his career had a huge complaint on the idea that you spend all this time in the studio recording, sound production, over engineering and perfecting it, and the people that are listening to it aren't really listening to it on the best quality. So I kind of went into it with that. And people can digest podcasts any way they want, and it's usually for whatever is the most convenient. That's why people do it, and why people digest podcasts in whatever nature, even commuting to work. You're probably going to only hear 70% of the actual work that I put into it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't drive myself crazy doing the work. I did it because I like the sound of it.
I appreciate that you did, because the way that I listen to almost everything is on these Technics.
Yeah.
And not to throw product placement in there, but I appreciate what you've done because I did hear literally every single thing that you did.
Yeah.
It always comes through. And I think, I don't want to say most, but it's creeping up probably between a quarter and a third of people are listening to podcasts, at least through AirPods.
Yeah, and that's what I'm realizing.
And there's a huge amount of people that are hearing every single little thing. And the way that you've created the environment in a long walk, it doesn't sound like you put $15 million into a professional sound design studio, but it does sound like you've found all of the different sounds that are important to color the story and the moment. So I can remain in the moment without being distracted, so to speak. I'm focused on the thing that you're portraying to me. And if there's something else that needs to be introduced, you are introducing it. So I do hear these other elements, but it's not super, super distracting.
Thank you.
So when I say not overproduced, I don't mean sounds bad, and I like that. You know, the way that like lo-fi kind of old school, kick that speaker in so that it sounds a little bit more punk. Like that's not what I'm talking
I
about
know what you mean.
at all. It all sounds good. It all sounds intuitive, and that's before we even start talking about the dialogue, the
Sure.
story elements, and the job that the actors are doing, and all the rest of
Yeah.
it. And now, how in terms of producing, we touched on that a little bit. In terms of you have to give some direction.
Yes. So the script has traditionally in any kind of screenplay or script for screen for any kind of production, usually you have some form of stage direction, not just actions that, in a traditional script that the audience would see. It's more of, you've got the character and then you've got a parentheses underneath it. There's just maybe two different descriptors and then the dialogue. That's all.
Yeah.
So what I've found is not giving them too much direction, because generally, and I think this has become established with my voice cast, is the idea that they will give me 3, 4, maybe sometimes even 5 different reads of the same line.
Oh, okay.
And they'll do it for every bit of dialogue they give me. So, I've got 15 minutes of dialogue per person per episode, but I've got this swath of different tones and reads that they can do, and I can match that up with other characters, and just how a moment's supposed to play out.
Yeah. Um, Now, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but full disclosure, I submitted something to you, and I don't know if it's going to make it or not, but you seemed pleased with it, and that was something that I had given you when you put
Oh, wait till you see my email later.
Oh God, I'm already out.
I'm just kidding.
No, so you put out a call, and because I have a number of people that I like a lot, and I'm a fan of the podcast, I said, let me see if I can contribute something, and you liked what I sent back.
I did.
And when I recorded what you sent me to read and send back, I thought to myself, I don't want to overburden and send too much, but I do feel like there's a couple different ways that this could go. So
Yeah.
I recorded multiple things. And when you responded and said, that was great, I liked this one and this one for this reason and for that reason, I thought to myself, well, that's good. I didn't send too much, but all I sent was 2 takes on a couple of different things. If people are sending in 4 and 5, that's fantastic, because that really gives you
Yeah.
a good amount to work with.
So Laura Harper Lake, again, who's done a tremendous amount of work in the first season.
And definitely, let's pause there for a second and shout out Laura Harper Lake,
Absolutely.
who's awesome. Has her own. You were just telling me about her.
Yep. She has her own podcast, Creative Guts, which is amazing, and she's got her own site and everything. And she's a wonderful artist as well. She has a number of different mediums of art.
Perfect. So look up Laura Harper Lake.
Yeah, please do.
Here they are. Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit Tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.
Welcome back, everybody. I know you just looked up Laura Harper Lake.
Yeah.
So
she is so dedicated to giving different takes, and it's never too much, but it's always the right amount. And by that I mean it's I have enough options for every single line. And what I always think is funny is her first read is almost perfect every time. It's like I will always listen to all of her other takes,
Sure.
but I'm almost always using her first
she
take.
just has great instincts.
She does, yeah. And Becky Barcy, who's also one of our cast, same thing. And they have a lot of back and forth, their 2 characters. So it's always kind of funny. And usually listening to the takes over and over again. I'm just looking, just have my eyes closed. I'm like, nope, just going back to that first take again every single time. And it isn't always that way, but it is like, 8 out of 10
Yeah,
times.
most of them.
Most of them, yeah.
That's really cool. So you've clearly found your Bill Murray to Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there
Okay.
are a couple of people who you can just count on. They're going to give you the thing that you're looking for. They're going to interpret it. They're going to intuit correctly
Yeah.
what it is that you're looking for.
And, I've had early on team meetings with the main cast. There's Laura Harper Lake, Becky Barcy, Mark Michael Adams, Chris Sumner, who does the main character,
Yeah.
who does a great job. My good friend Kenny Derryberry, and then a smattering of others in that first season. But everyone was pretty much on the same page from the start. And again, maybe it was just we're all around the same age. A lot of us went to the same college. Creatively, we're kind of the same. But I do remember one of the things was them offering a lot of help in a number of different ways, which I'm terrible at taking help. So I took what I could in terms of help, but a lot of it was me just because I didn't want to burden other people. Haha.
No, I feel that.
And they're like, well, it's your baby. You should be able to do what you want with it. And I said, you're right, but I don't want to raise this baby by myself.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is in their performances is where I get the help from them. Because the first time I was putting stuff together from the first episode and I was getting this dialogue and I was crying because I had never heard my creative written work being read, which was such a fantastic feeling.
What a cool thing.
Yeah.
You find your voice and then hear it back at yourself.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's really cool.
And it still is. We've been doing this for quite a few years now as a project, and it still amazes me when I get dialogue back that I've written from somebody, reading it.
Okay, so that's a good next question.
Sure.
Is what is informing this dialogue? Do you have an early childhood keen fascination on sci-fi and alternate world, alternate dimensional kind of stuff? Or is this all just a matter of it's easier to convey the story if I just remove Earth as set and setting and go from there?
Good point. Honestly, the setting is I just thought it was kind of a cool setting, honestly. The act of making stories is something I've always enjoyed doing, even from a young age, making little short, goofy stories. And then in college, I have a BA in creative writing, so I spent a lot of time doing short stories, spec fiction, which is what I ended up doing the most as towards the end of my college career was a lot of speculative and surrealist stuff, which I guess can kind of tie into some sci-fi stuff because you can keep people, in my idea, you keep people as a constant, but it's the environment that always changes. So A Long Walk is more about, it's like a Pulp Fiction noir story. It just happens to be in the future.
And in other areas of space.
Yeah. And the idea is that the environment almost makes no difference to me as long as it's fleshed out. It's more about people being people because human nature doesn't really change that much,
Yeah.
at least at this, where I'm going in the future. It's not far enough that we're evolved a different way. It's
Fascinating.
people
yeah.
are still assholes. People are still, conniving, any number of different things. It's relatable because human nature is human nature.
Right.
But again, for me, it's the environment could be transposed to anything else as long as the characters are interesting.
Yeah, and from what I remember, you don't weigh too heavily on that future element.
Yeah, no.
It's future, but close.
Yeah.
But future.
Yeah, it's like my estimation, and again, there's no exact, my estimation that it's like a couple hundred years in the future, like maybe 200, 300 years in the future, max.
Oh, you got to work more AI into it then, more droids.
You
'Cause
know-
those are only about 3 years away.
I know, and that was
My God, where are we going to be in 200 years if in 3 years the entire
we
world
not
changes
we,
again?
people might not be around, at this rate, but that has been a consideration too. But yeah, the idea of making stories like that, sci-fi or not, that was always just sort of secondary. I think um, that was just sort of the story idea that had come up early as that short story concept, and then that's what I just kind of ran with. It could have been any other thing, but that was at the time what I was working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what you're telling is more of a human experience, human interaction
Yeah,
kind of a
exactly.
story.
Correct.
Yeah. So what you don't need to do then is, engage in all kinds of illicit activities and dive deep into your subconscious and try and figure out where's the human race going and what types of things are going to happen and what, based on those things that are going to happen, what kinds of tools would they naturally have come up with to serve those different things, and
Yeah.
what is this world now going to be informed by that has all of, and which is when you start looking into things like 20,000 Leagues and various other things
Sure.
from Verne, that like you start going, oh my God, or Star Trek.
Yeah.
How many things have happened because, you look at Star Trek and you go, oh, well, okay, so they didn't hit it exactly, but I mean, that's pretty close.
It is. It is very close. Even the early stuff with the with automatic opening doors in the original Star Trek, they didn't exist until
Mind
yeah.
blowing.
It's little things.
The two-way.
Yeah.
That's easy now.
Yes, it
It's
is.
perfectly easy to figure out now, but when they initially wrote it, that was like they didn't know what satellites
Correct.
were at that point. So how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
You don't solve that question until technology advances. And then what it is not predicting technology, it's predicting tools that humans who have evolved through different circumstances and time periods and all of that, what would they naturally be looking for? A hammer today is not the same as a hammer 100 years ago. Pretty close,
Pretty
but
close.
it's evolved.
Sure.
So to think that there's going to be a device that enables you to communicate with a person here versus there, well, you need to know a little bit about physics.
Mhm.
You need to know that if you talk into a can here and there's a line that connects it to another can, you can hear.
Yeah.
You don't need to know what a satellite is to know that you should be able to, in the future, understand that humans sitting here would like to communicate with humans sitting there.
Yeah, that's true.
So your world is informed, basically, I guess what I'm saying, not by all these future tech predictions and stuff, but more how are the humans who exist then going to interact with each other. That
Yeah.
tells the story.
I think I like the idea too that technology hasn't advanced very far in certain ways, just because. And again, this is more of a speculative way of looking at it. Is that human nature is stubborn, so only certain things progress. So,
Great idea.
so it's like in my world, there isn't like a cure for cancer or anything. Like people still die. There's still war, and war is the same.
There's still a pilot,
Yeah,
a person
yeah,
flying.
correct. So
Where we're probably 3-4 years away from. No, it
AI.
makes way more sense to
Also
just have
true.
AI do it. There's zero
yeah,
pilot error when you have AI doing it.
that's true. So in my universe, I guess it's more grounded in an idea that you could transplant the story to today, almost ostensibly. But minus the fact that it's a space pilot and
It's another planet.
other planets. Yeah,
They can take the helmet off. They can
Yeah.
breathe. There's some kind of an atmosphere.
right, exactly, from terraforming. Which again, there's nothing new. I'm not introducing anything new in the science fiction realm of storytelling. It's all well established in other mediums of sci-fi. But I'm just again I'm transplanting what I would hope are interesting characters in just a setting that just happens to be slightly futuristic, and that's what I find is more important. I think is just making it relatable, because again, nothing is really that foreign as a concept. I would imagine for the audience.
I would submit this. And again, I don't mean to get in your head about this, but it is very Huxley of you.
Okay.
And I mean that as a high compliment,
Thank
as he's probably my favorite writer of all time.
Really.
Aldous Huxley, sheer genius, brilliance. What he gets right, 1984 gets wrong. And it's not able to be seen until 2020, 2025. Mm-hmm. Like in that kind of a time frame where you go, oh, what he actually was saying was this, and that people who interact like this would cause that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that, but that is something that in the worst case scenario you look out for, meaning 1984.
Yeah.
There's a great book that I'm blanking on the name of now, but it examines the difference from a long time past or a long time post look back at 1984 and Brave New World, and one obviously informed by the other via student-teacher relationship, but an interesting look at what Brave New World gets significantly more right than 1984 got, and that's not necessarily good for us. Because if you thought 1984 was a problem, that laziness that you're talking about in the human element is more profoundly problematic in Brave New World than it is in 1984.
You are correct.
And I think we're unfortunately closer to a Brave New World than a 1984.
Interesting. Yeah, 1984, it was the slow indifference that allowed certain things to progress in such a. I mean, I guess there's laziness too, but yeah, it's more of it's the non-activity and doom strolling, and yeah, it's that.
It's the dooms.
That's the indifference.
This may as well be the feelies.
Yeah.
It's called TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
And they're legalizing Soma everywhere right now.
Yeah, I know, right?
You can get it everywhere. Just get some Soma in you and then just start scrolling through the reels. They're really short, they're really quick, but they make you feel good. Or they elicit whatever response you're trying to feel, but it's all that dopamine flush.
Oh, yeah.
All of that passivity, all of that ties back to Brave New World.
Yes, it does.
And that's what you can do when you have an over 200 IQ and you start writing.
When there's a moment that I have yet to write for the second season of the podcast. And it's just a small little moment that I've had in the back of my mind for quite a long time. And it's just a moment. And I can't even tell what character it would be, but it's a moment where the character is in a waiting room somewhere and they pick up actual, printed news or something like a newspaper, and they're reading just casually. And it's a pretty full waiting room. And there's a moment where they bring the paper down and they realize that everyone in the room is staring at them because everybody's on their mobile devices, and them reading a newspaper is the most foreign thing.
How cool.
And he has to, or they have to sort of put it down and, not attract attention. But that's the concept.
Oh, interesting. So the recognition after the fact and the desire to assimilate rather than stand out. Why would that person want to assimilate rather than stand out? Why would it be important? Are they undercover? I don't know. Are they,
But yeah, it's one of those, again, there's moments that I've had either written down or in my mind years prior to even writing them.
Yeah.
And again, that's how a lot of the writing process is too, not to get too much into that's going back for it. Yeah.
It's interesting because that's the same as music.
Yeah, okay.
The way that Ryan and Justin write in Cursed, a lot of the stuff that Ryan has told me about, these are ideas that come to him, and they don't even come to him in the form of words. Sometimes it's in notes and in no particular order. Sometimes it's inflection, and sometimes it's just a rhythm. And he'll write down a series of words that carry the same beats, even though those aren't the words that are going to be used. It's just the feel of the delivery of them that he writes down, takes them, basically beat maps it, and then goes, okay, so what is it that I'm trying to say here? But he has bits and pieces in notebooks that if they become useful years and years and years later, it's like, oh, that's the perfect tool to carry this. And it tells this story, so then I take this and I take this and I do this to it. And that's the creative, it's a very similar creative process.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because you're carrying something from forever ago.
Yeah, then that's exactly it.
Eventually you'll have it informed correctly and it'll come to life.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have notes on my phone of like a line that I found while I was driving. I was like, that'd be kind of a cool thing. Or, I have, a notebook and I have pages and pages of either sketches or of a scene that I can think of visually and then write later on. Or, a vignette of a scene, but I have no place for it in the story, and then eventually it kind of falls into place eventually, a year from now kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that is cool that it kind of parallels that.
Now, when you have that idea, how hard is it to pull yourself back from putting it in this project and saying, maybe it's a tool that I don't use in this project, or maybe I color it differently and then use the same one in another project at the same time, different actors, different words, different other stuff. But you can reuse, like Tarantino does that
Sure.
a lot.
Yes, he does.
Use that same thing, put different characters in, and you can get that same visceral reaction. You can get that same emotional reaction. You can get that same kind of pensive state where somebody is sitting going, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know about this situation. Something feels uneasy." Like that, there's a thing that triggers that feeling,
Yeah.
and it in a different story completely. You'll get a whole different scenario because of it.
Yeah, and yeah, there are certainly things that I have written for this a while back, and I don't think I'd have a place for them in another project. Maybe that's assuming I have another project after, but
I would hope so.
I would hope so too. But yeah, there's never always a place for something,
Sure.
because otherwise you have that risk of it being a forced moment that just doesn't quite land.
Right.
So in that case, you've got Tarantino is a great example of being able to kind of have moments that don't always work, and then you find other project or medium where yes, this makes more sense. And again, he has his own quirks, and I like Tarantino.
Love him.
And some of my favorite movies are his. For me, actually, it's unpopular opinion, but Jackie Brown's one of my favorites.
Try me. No, Jackie Brown's awesome. Don't believe anybody who says Jackie Brown is not good.
Jackie Brown is so good. Also, and I'll say this, I find it really good because it's not based on his original story. I think for Tarantino, I think he's a great storyteller. I think sometimes he's his own worst enemy sometimes, because he will, sometimes he gets too wordy, because but that's his style, which I do enjoy, but sometimes it's a bit much. Jackie Brown is no exception, but I think the fact that it's a not his original story is what makes it a little more interesting. Again, I love all of his filmography.
Yeah, to add to that, I wouldn't say that he's a guy who has a singular perspective.
No, he's a film geek.
He is. He comes from a lot of different backgrounds, all interesting, all worthwhile. But to have somebody else's writing, to put somebody else's vision in front of him, it's impossible for him not to come at that from a wholly alternate perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It is someone else's perspective.
It is what, his third film, I think?
Jackie Brown?
Yeah. Fourth? No, I think it's his third.
I have fourth or fifth in my head.
Really? Well, I think Reservoir
was it
Dogs,
30?
Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction.
Next wasn't Jackie Brown, was it?
Jackie Brown was 97, I think, or 96.
Yeah. It may be.
Yeah.
It may be. Nevin, are you close enough to every now and then we kick to producer Nevin and say, "Hey, can you solve this for us?" I need my own young Jamie here.
Right? But yeah, it's
not trying to hold up.
No. But yeah,
the way that Tarantino tells, not more than the way that he tells his stories, the way that he approaches his projects, I would say each one has to have something interesting or unique to him that he's trying to express,
Yes.
Or he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Which I think is appealing to me in that it's not repetitive and he's not saying the same thing over again, which
No.
I think is what a lot of the more harsher critics of the Marvel universe and what they're doing with comic books now.
Yeah.
That's really their gripe, is like, you told me this one. It's
Yeah.
the same damn thing over and over.
That's why people have superhero fatigue.
And it's like, well, but the thing is, a lot of the movie buffs, a lot of the story aficionados need to come to an understanding that it took me a long time to come to, which is, it doesn't all have to be for you. And there's a lot of people who grew up picked on geeks who needed to have that, whether it be a storyteller that they particularly liked. For me, it was poetry. There were a number of poets that I just...
You nerd.
Still, I just tear through their material
Yeah.
because of the way that their brain works and the way that they put things together. It's not always the things that they're saying, but the way that they construct. And Tarantino is one of those who, whatever it is that you're looking at, you'll find something interesting about the way that he's telling based on a perspective or an idea that he's trying to convey. Whereas superhero movies are, there's a peril. Somebody's in peril.
It's a very specific. It's
Oh,
a very.
something-
It's a formula that's.
Something went wrong.
Yeah.
No, all hope is lost. But wait, like if you're coming from a world where it feels like there's no hope and there's no way through this or out of this, sometimes you don't need somebody to take you on like a beat up, knocked down, drag you through the mud story, visceral story, like the way someone like Tarantino.
Yeah,
will.
and
You just need to know there's hope and to have a little fun because you spent the last 2 months crying
Yeah.
and your life is never going to get better. But for some reason, this specific superhero, Moon Knight, you really identify with because you have these crazy thoughts from time to time.
Yeah.
And you don't fit in with all these other people and they just don't get it. Like that whole thing is just so much easier to take in. Let them have it.
Was it the third, Nevin?
What?
The
Jackie Brown.
Jackie Brown. Was it his third film?
I'm not sure.
Ah.
I'll get back to you.
Okay. But yeah, and yeah, with his earlier work, it also helped that the early '90s was still kind of I wouldn't say stagnant for film, but there was definitely a need for more experimentation, and Tarantino fit in very well
Yeah.
in that time frame. And
The Bad Boy.
yeah, I mean, a bad boy and someone with no film background, ostensibly, which obviously at the time in terms of his perspective was very refreshing.
Yeah.
And today you've got a lot of very good filmmakers I would still consider maybe alternative or not mainstream in the right ways. Tarantino's been at it long enough that he might as well. Oh, third.
Nailed it. Well done.
Thanks. Yeah. All right.
That's it, folks. That's all we're after.
But yeah, I think, and again, that idea of fun storytelling, it may not be specifically from Tarantino, but I do appreciate that. It's you're getting a story across, but you have to find a way that keeps a audience engaged, and not engaged in the way that they can watch or listen to something as background noise, like a procedural, which is again great to fall asleep to. Doesn't make good watching or listening, in my opinion.
No.
Because a procedural is something you can pass the time with. It's not, you don't get anything at the end of every episode. It's just another end. Whereas if you have I use this as an example of a bunch of people that don't know it. The Amazon Prime series Bosch, it's one of the few modern cop shows that isn't, one, procedural, and two, it's surprisingly well written. Again, the source material there is from a very long series of books by Michael Connolly, who did Lincoln Lawyer, and he has a decent writing background himself. Again, it's not the best stuff out there, but in a sea of, again, procedurals, it stands out pretty good. I mean, a lot of it comes down to the casting and the way it's made and filmed is surprisingly good.
No, I'm not familiar with this one. What about it is different that would set it aside?
Yeah.
You're referring to
So-
maybe someone who hasn't seen it.
Sure. I kind of go back to, it's a L.A. Detective, kind of hard boiled. You could almost see him as like a Sam Spade, like PI from like the 1930s, like that kind of
Okay.
hard boiled cop. But he just happens to modern day detective, and it just every season there's a different case. But the fact that he's doing so many different things every season kind of plays more to the realism, and the fact that the police work that's portrayed is done so realistically, almost to a fault. puts shows like CSI, which at this point is so silly, but shows that were meant to be about the specifics of certain things get so wrong. And this show, which is pretty underrated, gets so incredibly right and so effortlessly. And again, it's also filmed very well. The main cast is cast very well, and even the character actors are all interesting, which is I think very hard to do.
It's really hard to do.
You know, and you have because a lot of side characters either are, you know,
NPCs at best.
yeah, right, your comic relief.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Here and there, you've got maybe an interesting thing, but they're all interesting, and you're interested in them and where their lives go, which is again very rare. It's like,
But not because of story, because of happenstance, like the tall, goofy friend.
right, exactly. So and again, I look at stories like that and that storytelling like that, and I say, yeah, that's what I hope to gain. It's you don't have a quick reward at the end of the episode. It's like, oh, it's all tidied up.
Yeah.
You are rewarded by watching a season or seasons of a
Right.
show because you are now, ingratiated with all these characters that you've been following and actually enjoy. And
Whereas a lot of the ones that get done, like more of the CSI formula kind of thing,
Yeah.
it's your Pavlov's ending. You can almost tell when it's going to come, how it's going to come.
you got it.
They give you the,
You're never surprised anymore.
no,
Yeah.
it's, if you know enough about the new law that they did, you know why they came up with the idea for this entire episode, and they're just illustrating, why it was important that it happened or something like that. Yeah. That's something that it's almost more mechanical than it is creative.
Yeah.
Because the creative thing finds you in an element in a place where this is almost foreign, but it's interesting. I'm intrigued. Yeah. Whereas the mechanical is, oh, of course, yes, because that.
Yeah.
It's like a pat on the back rather than, I'm being exposed to something brand new and an idea that I'm familiar with, and now I'm curious.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of curiosity in mechanical storytelling.
Well, and that's when you have like an army of writers. I mean, that's American television to a T.
And that's when you get the money.
Well, yeah.
But with that comes production.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the overproduction you're talking about. Another good example of things that I've kind of pulled from in terms of just style is the series Mr. In Between.
I don't know it.
Again, and I wouldn't blame you. That's a very seldom known show. It's an Australian series that FX took a risk on, and did a great job. It's 3 seasons, and 2 guys wrote the whole thing. Not a sea of writers, just 2 people, and the creator, who also is the writer, is the main character.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's such
Kind of
a
Kevin Smithing it a little bit.
almost, yeah. And it's so close to being tropey but it isn't. It's almost the hitman with a heart of gold, but has like a family. But it's not that. It has sort of like a Richard Linklater, like following meandering life, where you're like following a person in their life, and it just happens to be such and such things. But I look at that and I say, yeah, I see in that what I am doing for this, where it's just I'm a one-man show more or less in terms of the storytelling process. I don't have an army telling me yes or no, or studio interference and things like that. Obviously not, but it's the idea that I'm responsible for what happens. So one, I do have to take responsibility and be. I don't have stakeholders, but I have myself to kind of, because a lot of this I make because I want it to be something that I find interesting.
Yeah.
And I hope that other people find it interesting too. But it's I'm not trying to impress upon other people that this is how it should be. It's just I think this is an interesting way to do it.
I don't think there's a better way to go. That's the way that we approach everything with Cursed on Earth. Anything that I get involved with, that's really what I'm looking for is that something that put out something that I want. I want to be able to consume this. I mean, basically, having anything recording this right now is only for the benefit of anybody that wants to find interesting, creative people. This is I have these conversations with people constantly.
Yeah.
This is for me. And everyone can watch it.
Just
if they
feeding
want.
you.
But honestly, I don't care. I'm not like after counts. I'm not watching the counter and trying to figure out,
Yeah.
okay, how do we penetrate the market better over here and all of that. Couldn't possibly care less.
Yeah, same thing.
Everything that you're doing is, if it's informed by that and you're making yourself happy by making it, that's the first step in making something truly authentic.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, you're very Thank
First
you.
off, I literally would not be all that interested if it was just another soap opera style. You can almost clock it exactly how it's
Yeah.
going to go. Interesting and compelling, something that forces adjacent thought, or even at least just alternate perspectives.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally dig what you're doing.
Thanks.
So, not to make the entire thing about the minutia of creating stories. You're steeped in it, so stay on track if that's what you want to do. But you're naturally a compelling person. What has brought you to this place? You mentioned you went to college for story writing.
Yeah.
I don't want to dig into a past that you're running from, but what has made you the person that you are? Because you have a really firm understanding of how to remain authentic, if nothing else, just to yourself. But you're compelled to create and put out. What is it that's setting that up?
Good question. I don't know. I think a lot of it was growing up with people who were much older than I was. I didn't have siblings. I didn't. I'd a good core group of friends, but for a long period of time, I ended up being with people who were 3 to 4 times my age growing
Okay.
up. So I matured very quickly, and that eventually evened out around when I got to college. But I was still considered like a grumpy old, shit.
Curmudgeon.
Yeah, I absolutely was.
Off my dorm floor.
And so, one, it was hard to associate with people my age, but I had a lot of perspective because I ended up interacting with people who were, much older than me.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of forced that. I mean, I got good at reading, or I was reading faster because I was watching silent films with my father when I was single digits. I was like 6 or 7, and I was starting to read faster because I was reading, subtitle cards in between moments of Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin.
Love them. Yeah.
And I again, my father, who could have easily have been a film historian, just because he spent a good portion of the 70s either reading or watching films, and he's still a wealth of information that's still intimidating to me to this day. So storytelling and film was also kind of a huge part of my growing up.
I have a not an exact, but similar. I always hung out with people way older than me. My favorite times were hanging out with my dad and his friends, because they didn't talk about the nonsense that people my age were talking about.
Yeah.
They talked about interesting things. Let me try this on with you. There's you can almost kind of tell when somebody was around people much older than them growing up, because they are better at telling stories. Because when you're young, and you can tell who wasn't around a lot of old people when they were growing up, listen to them tell a story, they never really get to the point. There's no structure to it. They add in everything that enlightens and informs a point without actually making the point ever. And it's almost like listening perpetually to a 6-year-old who is telling you a story and has just realized you're not breaking your attention. It's there's a moment I think every kid can identify where you're saying something to a person way older than you,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not like, yeah,
Yeah.
but they're actually, oh yeah? And when you first realize that you've hooked them, they're waiting for you to say the next thing.
Yeah.
Now you just start feeding them everything, trying to figure out what else I can say to them to get them to respond that way. And I think that's where the conveyor belt of all the things you can think to
Yeah.
say starts. Whereas when you're talking to people all the time that are way older than you as a much younger person, their attention isn't going to be held unless you're giving them the things that are crucial to the point.
Yeah.
Get to the point.
Get to the point.
If you're telling me something and it's illustrating the same idea 1,000 different ways, I can't necessarily see that you're talking about that idea because it could be 100 different ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Get to the damn point.
I think there is, and this could also be generational, a lot of, I'm at the, the early millennial, I'm, and I have, even to this day, I still have a hard time associating as a millennial, which I guess millennials are now the old shits anyway.
What was your year?
85.
Oh, you're younger by 5 years. So yeah, you're properly millennial.
Yeah. But
I'm that weird X.
you're like the last of the Gen X's.
I'm 1980. So
Okay.
I remember kids that I didn't really want to be friends with because they had a lot of zeros and nines in their phone number.
Oh no.
And if you're dialing a phone number and you get a 9 wrong, it's like, oh God, you have a 9 at the end of your number. Now I got to dial it all over again. Like there's these things that existed in the world prior
Yes.
that you just don't even think about anymore.
No.
So, okay, so interesting. You're coming at it from.
But yeah, a lot of people growing up in that same time frame as me, there was a lot of ums and likes,
Yeah.
which you still have.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an 8-year-old, and that's what I hear. But it was also there was almost a requirement for a meandering nature of any kind of story for some reason. It was more about the journey than the actual end of the trip. And again, that can be great for a movie or a book, not when you're telling someone a hopefully succinct story.
Yeah.
You know.
That's the never-ending story generation.
Yeah, it really is. So I do know people who often the preamble is long story short, but then ends up being a long
Oh
story.
my God, they're the worst. It just goes on and on and on.
And
Give me the short version, man.
it's okay, but yeah, short and sweet is always better, and you can find ways to make a short story creative,
Yeah.
and interesting. It doesn't have to involve every single moment along the way, but that does seem to be the case for a lot of people, at least my age.
Yeah. What is that show on Netflix? Drugs, Sex, Robots?
Love's, yeah, I know what you're talking about. The
Love-
one that's all the shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a bunch in there that kind of hit that perfectly.
Yeah.
Where it's not a long drawn out thing, but they say a lot very, very quickly.
Yes. And I guess that was another thing that I will say without getting into this again too much. The Mr. In Between show, they're like 22-minute episodes, and they say more than hour-long episodes of a similar nature, because the writing's that tight.
Oh, interesting. Mr. In Between.
Mr. In Between, yeah. I would highly recommend it.
Everyone write that down. I'm making a note.
Yeah, on FX. You can watch it on Hulu or wherever, or buy it somewhere. But yeah, it's the idea that you can succinctly and creatively get your point across in fewer moments without a lot of this and a lot of padding.
Yeah, in comedy they call that economy of words.
That's right.
I don't know if that's the same in all the other storytelling.
Pretty much
Probably.
is, yeah.
Yeah, go back. The first draft doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be. And then once you have a first draft, you go back and see what's absolute garbage, what needs to be rewritten, which is everything.
Yes.
And then once you have everything rewritten, what words can be removed? And if words can be removed, are there words that can be substituted that tell entire ideas just by lining up a word or two next to each other?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that in short stories, probably that's the bread and butter.
That's very important, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got people that can do microfiction, which is, like a page or even less than a page, and you're getting a short story concept across. And it's the same idea. It's just a much more extreme version of that, where all you're doing is just the meat and potatoes, obviously as clearly as you can, but there's no room for like padding and puff.
Yeah, there's not a lot of fluff in
No.
there. As the Ramones used to say, all killer, no filler.
That's right.
Yeah, a big fan. Big
Oh, yeah,
fan.
same. But yeah, I think that ties into just how I tell stories, how I like to at least try to talk to people. But I also have a good self-awareness. It's the know your audience. And I see that in people that are my age, younger, and older than me, where people will just talk at other people and they don't realize that the other person isn't interested in the topic or the subject. And it blows my mind how that isn't natural for people. And I know it isn't for everybody. There's a sense of, again, self-awareness that people just don't have sometimes, where they can just sort of blab about something. It doesn't have to be not interesting, but it could be for a particular person, that maybe that person that they're talking to.
That's the 7-year-old. The 7-year-old that never figured out
Yeah.
how to tell a story.
And I've worked with people like that before.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Just that's the thing that a lot of people don't learn until they're in their 40s. That there's no adults on the planet. There are none.
Yeah.
Grand total of 0 adults on this planet. It's just different kids at different ages.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that everybody that is a kid is also an adult. That's not at all what it is.
Right.
If you want to know what I mean, hang out with a bunch of 60-year-olds. When a 90-year-old walks in the room, they stop swearing. The 60-year-olds,
Yeah.
who are way older than me, are all going to act like kids
Yeah.
who just had an adult walk in the room. And then a 112-year-old will go, talk to me when you're 100, to a 90-year-old. And it's like, that person shouldn't even be alive anymore. What are you talking about? Nobody in this country lives to 90 anymore. That's like, it's the percentage of the population is like 0.000001% of the population makes it over 90.
My grandmother just passed away this past summer. I think she was 97.
97 is incredible.
Yeah, it's insane.
My great aunt, I thought she had the most incredible run, 95 and change. And that's just
Pretty good.
It's in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, yeah.
Once you're over 90, a couple of years is like you realize 2 years difference when you're 14 to a 16-year-old. That is huge.
Yeah.
And you don't catch that until you're in your 30s, maybe 40s, and you look back and go, "Oh, my brother that's 4 years older than me, we're basically the same age."
Yeah.
There's no difference in our age, really.
No.
14 to 18, monumental
Huge.
difference. Like that's basically a toddler versus an adolescent.
Well, it's also the concept of, as you age, the concept of time.
Gets a little weird.
It does, yeah. There's a part in your brain that even changes as you get older. Obviously, that's also you aging. But yeah, the perception of the passing of time is different as you
Gets
get
a
older.
little slippery.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Time's a little soupy after a while.
Yeah. Throw in a blip like COVID, and now all of a sudden, how many years has it been since 2000?
Yeah.
25. 25 since 2000.
Yeah, a little scary.
It's just weird.
Yeah,
It's like we're closer to the 20s than they were in, what's that movie? All right.
Oh, Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused. When we saw Dazed and Confused,
Yeah.
the time difference is, that's basically, there's a wider time distance between now and 2000 than they were when we were watching that to the 70s, because that was only 20 years.
When people talk about what's considered old now, that's what makes me feel old. Where it's like, oh yeah, that old car, that old movie, and it's like from 2002. I'm like, that's not what I consider old. I consider like 1960s maybe old.
Yeah, you got to stop internalizing that. It's not that you're old or that old is bad.
Old is different.
Anytime someone says that, I go, "Oh, you're new here." It's like you just did the perspective. Just turn the perspective around just a little bit. It's like you're not better because you're fresher.
Well, I think
You're less useful because you're fresher.
yeah. For me, the idea of young now is people who have only been alive since the invention of the internet or since the invention of smartphones.
Smartphone. Oh my God.
That's what I consider young, because again, obviously we're a little bit different in age, but I mean, flip phones were just coming out when I was in high school, like just about to graduate high school. There was
Flip
not
phones.
yeah, not
Oh,
everyone.
you are young.
I know, right? But I mean, I was around for the proliferation and invention of the internet.
Yeah.
I remember having like a Commodore 64,
Sure.
and then eventually having a home PC that had dial-up. But again, me trying to explain that to my 8-year-old is such a bizarre concept, because he can't wrap his head around that. He can't wrap around his head around the idea of cable television versus everything being streaming, which is
Oh, isn't
really
that a
hard to
weird one?
explain. It's really weird.
That's a real weird one. Like, why did everybody get together at the same time to do a thing? Well, because there were only so many networks. Can you wrap your head around this? Networks in simulcast times 3 is Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Like, there's big stars today, but not big stars like Johnny Carson. And if a younger person goes, oh, that's old, it's like, you don't understand. You don't understand.
Yeah.
There was one guy. All 3 major networks pointed at him and said, okay, everybody listen. In the time of the 80s, there were 10 big names.
Yeah.
There were some people that have been around for a long, long time, but Roseanne was a giant.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy was a giant. Carson was the king of giants.
Yeah.
He was the absolute king of giants. And at any point in time, tens of millions of people, anywhere from 30 to 80 million people, would be watching specifically Johnny Carson. So now if you're like, well, every time I put out a podcast, I get 200,000 listens. Like, that's cute.
Yeah.
You have absolutely no concept. You have 4 million followers and you're like, I'm a big deal. Not really. You're
Yeah.
just getting paid well. If you want to know what paid well is, get simulcast on 3 networks.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in the world is looking at specifically you. That's not 3 million per episode.
Yeah.
That's 80 million per episode. So when you made it on Carson, when you were one of those people,
Yeah.
everyone knew you. Everybody was talking about you. You were so now when you talk about somebody, you could be talking about any number of people. This person's huge on TikTok, but nobody in the real world knows that person.
So then that's where that idea that fame is now almost entirely generational. Like, you could be well known with a very specific demographic of viewers, but
Yeah.
that's a very specific age group.
Generational fame is that weird thing now.
Yeah.
Because Steve Martin is now also known by the youngest generation.
Yeah, that's true.
And Steve Martin has been big in every generation since the 70s.
Yeah.
So there's 4 generations.
That is impressive,
It's
actually.
incredible. Bob Dylan
Yeah.
is generationally relevant since the 60s.
Yeah. So I mean, some people can do it.
It's mind-blowing.
And
There's so few.
A lot of it is maybe it's just luck and timing, and then just I think it's just luck, honestly.
There's a lot of persistence, though, because at a certain point, people in a younger generation just go, who's this old guy talking right now?
Yeah.
You have to be saying something in each one of those generations. And those 2 specifically have been generationally relevant in multiple, not just multiple generations, in every generation since they started.
Yeah.
I think if he hadn't died, Carlin would have easily been generationally relevant all the way through to right now.
Yeah, I think so too.
Lenny Bruce, completely changing the way that stand-up comedy is done.
Yeah.
Stand-up comedy is now a recognized thing where there's superstars in comedy. Just in the 80s, 90s, there was a couple, there's a few.
Yeah.
4, 5, 6. Now it's a profession. There's a path. There's no more blazing.
Yeah. I mean, there was a profession back then, but it was like a very small club.
It was a super small club, but there was also so many different ways of skinning that thing.
Yes.
Like, if you listen to Lenny Bruce now, that's not comedy. What do you mean that's comedy?
Yeah. Well, like Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor was taking off from Lenny Bruce,
Yeah.
just talking
Yeah.
about stuff. but it's calculated stuff. You're talking about things that otherwise wouldn't normally get talked about in society and saying things that gather a rise. So it's not just about making somebody chuckle, it's about saying something that you shouldn't be saying, and they're laughing because it's a reflex, not because they thought about it first, because you said something very specific they know they're not supposed to laugh at,
Yeah.
and now they're cracking up, feeling some kind of way about what they're like. After they start laughing, they're like, oh, shit, I'm not supposed to be laughing at
Yeah.
that. And you start looking around like, I hope nobody thinks I'm a terrible person because this comedian just got me to laugh. Pryor was the first one,
Yeah.
I think, that really nailed that one. Steve Martin close after.
Yeah.
But he was in this whole other kind of way where silly for the sake of being silly,
Yes.
which is a whole different kind of comedy, which
Yeah.
I adore.
Richard Pryor was the sort of slice of life from his perspective.
Yeah.
Which was perfect for him and perfect for the time. And I mean, still to this day is excellent.
Yeah.
But yeah, Steve Martin had a very unique way of telling jokes, and a lot of it was also physical comedy. And yeah, that was his background.
The original prop comic.
Yeah, pretty much.
A little bit. Not he just a little sprinkling in there.
Yeah, it wasn't just that.
But without him, you don't get Gallagher.
That's true.
Without Gallagher, you don't get Carrot Top, who is still doing it.
I know. When he isn't like at the gym getting jacked.
Dude, that guy is a monster. But he's one of those ones who figured out how to make Vegas work for him.
Yeah.
Which, as a comic, really?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
The persistence and knowing your audience.
That's, yes, tying back to know your audience. He does his thing, and people come to see him at one specific spot, and he's so good at doing his thing, you fly in.
Yeah, props to him for figuring it out. See what I did there?
Yeah, but what he's doing takes a different kind of creativity.
Yeah.
And it's one that I think everybody can relate to, because he brings out those little things that maybe you've thought of before, or you've thought there's a little something weird there. He takes that little bit of weird to a whole more advanced step, and then illustrates it, and then puts it in front of you in a way that you can completely identify with. So he's endearing.
Yeah. I'll see that.
I don't know why he got knocked so hard for so long. I can't remember who it was, but some comedian just totally crapped on him, and then everyone went, ha ha, Carrot Top.
Got on the train, yeah.
Oh, God. You can't just start hating because somebody makes fun of. It was probably like Family Guy did an episode or something.
Well, they did I think there was a couple of jokes on it.
They mutilated him.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're a comedy fan, if you're in comedy, you have to be a comedy fan.
Yes.
If someone is ripping on you, you have to laugh. You can't get all bent out of shape and mad about it.
Yeah.
Use comedy. Attack them.
I in kind of in the vein of growing up with people that were older than me, also watching things that were not on anymore. So
Okay.
I ended up watching a lot of obviously films that were old, but shows that were old. I watched, I don't know if you know SCTV.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Second City.
Yeah.
So in that same, strange humor by U.S. standards, even at the time, you had
In Living Color shaped my world.
yeah, and
To a huge
that's
extent.
in that same sort of vein.
And Kids in the Hall.
Yeah, Kids in the Hall. But that sort of like bizarre, sort of non sequitur humor was just like so bizarre and awesome.
Pleasing. Very, very pleasing.
and for SCTV you had people like Eugene Levy, Joe Flaherty, John Candy.
John Candy. John Belushi.
Yep, Martin Short.
Martin Short. Giant.
And just all these great comedic minds, like this crazy Canadian show.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah.
Speaking of shorts that sometimes hit and sometimes don't, but
Yeah.
hey, throw it all at the wall, see what works.
Yeah, right. But yeah, and you just have all these great comedic minds that's kind of, and again, you go back to even early SNL days, like real early SNL days.
Originals.
Yeah, you have that same kind of right time, right people, and you've got that creative collaboration that just makes really good, lasting content.
Yeah.
Whereas today is everything's just sort of kind of comes and goes so quickly. But that's also how we digest material. Is that after about 10 seconds we're bored and we go to the next thing.
But that's the reason that you go to the next thing is because you're bored. It's not new.
Right.
It's not creative. It's not somehow shocking or jarring. So we are always kind of perpetually after that next thing, but it's a rise,
Yeah, of course.
which to me, I think that's really where the social justice warrior thing really attacked the crap out of that concept of saying things that are horrible, desensitizing, and then moving past.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know the intent of something and you just presume everything is bad because it's not friendly or nice,
Sure.
like, oh my God, the amount of stifling that you do is not good.
No.
Like, you can't just, you have to look more into what is it and why is it that you're reacting, and then control your reaction enough to find out, is this person, and that's not to say that everything that's social justice is just like a farce and not needed, but there's an element of getting out of control. Fire is good, but streaming down a hillside in California
Not so
after
good.
the summer is gone, that's a bad thing.
Yes.
It's a real bad thing. And if you approach every single fire that way, naturally, yeah, you're going to be like, put that fire out now. But if it's in a campfire in the middle of the desert at night, you need that.
Yeah.
You are going to die without that fire. So short storytellers, I think, are, not to, again, glow up your head a little bit, but short storytellers taking on those new and insightful things that make people feel uncomfortable and illustrate them in a way that they understand why they are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think is a huge asset. I really like that it's going the way that it is. I hope you don't change what you're doing. It's awesome. But maybe your next project, take that as a focus.
Yeah.
Is how do I make you uncomfortable, and then explain why you are and why you shouldn't be.
So this particular podcast, this project, I think will run its course at the end of this season.
Yeah.
I don't think it's giving it away, but I think for the most part, I had pretty much planned 2 seasons would be it. I didn't want it to overstay its welcome.
It's not really a short story if it's 15 seasons long.
Exactly. And it kind of the anti-procedural as well in that regard.
Yeah.
The idea for another project would be something obviously in my wheelhouse, which again is a grounded story, but it probably would just be a modern day, like in the normal world story. But it would have to be obviously interesting, and the characters would be interesting. But every once in a while, I'll just kind of noodle on it. I'm like, yeah, what would it be? I don't know. But again, when you watch a mini series or something that's decent, streaming or whatever, it always feels like a good short story. Like that's how it should feel. Again, it shouldn't be like a marathon. It shouldn't feel exhausting.
Yeah.
You should be able to watch it, digest it, and at the end be like, that was good. I feel good, I feel fulfilled, even if it's like, sad or terrible or happy in terms of the story and how it goes. But you should be able to come away not feeling like, you're running a marathon for a week.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's also what drives people away from certain mediums, where it's like they realize ahead of time that a show or a series is so long, or it's like, oh, this is too much of a time commitment, and it might be good, but
Yeah.
I think that sometimes drives away an audience is that, and it has nothing to do with people who are doom scrolling and don't have the attention span. It's more of being able to, again, not condense a story, but being able to succinctly tell a story.
Yeah. I think so. The people who have spent any number of consecutive days, weeks, years in New York might understand this one better than someone who might not. But and it has nothing to do with quality either. you can continue good quality in something that is a short for a while if you're skilled at it. The way that if you're going out for a night on the town in New York, maybe you don't hit Cat's Deli. If you're going home afterward, yeah, you did your thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hit Cat's, get a monster sandwich. I'm going to eat half of it. I'm bringing the other half home. But if that's your third stop of 8, I don't want to carry half a sandwich. Great sandwich. It's delicious, but I can't finish it. But now I have to carry it around with me all night, and now it becomes just a little bit of a burden.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, okay. Now I can't let too many episodes go by. I got to stay current with it, but I have so many other things I'm trying to do right now.
I think that when my wife and I try to commit to a show, because we're not like a Netflix and chill. We have a kid, we have jobs that are, I mean, not exhausting, but we have full-time lives, so we can't really commit to where watching 4 hours of something at a time. So we have to very carefully commit to something.
I feel that.
So, leaning more towards miniseries or shows that are, maybe 3 seasons instead of 8 seasons or 20 seasons or something. And again,
Open-ended.
yeah, exactly. And that's why we are always not against, but shy away from big procedurals as a serious thing to watch.
Yeah.
Because again,
I don't have time for that.
you don't have time for that. And again, you're not coming away with anything.
Right.
So at the end of the day, are you, I wouldn't say enlightened, but do you, feel different? Do you have a different experience after all that? Probably not, because it's like the same thing you've watched a million times before.
So the question then is it worth consuming something that's so filled with fluff? Can you tell me in 15 sentences the same thing that you're about to tell me in an hour? Because if you can tell me the same thing in 15 sentences and you don't, nowadays, I want to murder you. Like,
Yeah.
I have so much to get to. At the end of it, were you just trying to say this?
Yeah.
You just held me conversationally captive for an hour. Now I'm mad at you, and I don't ever want to watch anything else that you do.
You
at
bastard.
All. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would much rather get something that's going to I don't want to use cliche stuff, but move the needle a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some kind of an informed alternate perspective, or clue me into something that I wasn't seeing. If there's an aha or 2 moments in the first 15 minutes, I'm usually like, okay, I'll give this the other 45 minutes.
Sure.
Because if you're giving me that now, I have to think there's probably at least 2 or 3 more coming. I'd love to get those as well.
Yeah.
And if you're giving me 2 right now and there's 3 or 4 more to come, I've got to believe that at the end of the episode, there's a really good one that's going to change the way that or better inform the way that I look, or give me a tool set now that I didn't have before.
So that rule usually holds true. Although, I mean, generally for anything to really make it, at least to the publishing point, yes, that you always have that hook. That pilot episode is so important, and generally that's what obviously gets shows picked up, obviously. But that the first act of a show or even a movie has to draw you in. If it doesn't, it's not doing its job. I think when I was writing the pilot episode of the podcast, that was a huge consideration too. Was how dense do I make this? Because if I throw too much at the audience, they're going to get overwhelmed. And again, with it not being a visual medium, things have to be portrayed in such a way that everyone can understand just by listening to it, obviously. But generally, when I came up with him being right in the middle of without giving it away, but right in the middle of what was happening right at the beginning of the episode, in the first 30 seconds, I was like, okay, well, either people are going to either find this interesting, or they're going to be like, yeah, it's not for me.
It's not really for them.
But that's okay.
Give them the out without making it terrible.
Exactly. It was just, you kind of get an idea of what this is going to be like right in the onset. So it's almost like a mission statement, that first minute or so, and people can choose to keep listening, or they can just say, no, it's not for me, and
It's
that's
not for
fine.
me.
Yeah.
Not everything is for you.
No.
That's fine. There's so much content, and it's so easily accessible now
Yeah.
that, I mean, there's probably an hour to talk about just the difference between a world where there's information at the ready and an information world where there's gatekeepers. And the problem with having a world where there's gatekeepers, whereby there are a select number of people who decide what ideas get through,
Sure.
and people who were born after 1995, they just don't understand
No.
that there's an entire world that was happening, and what we're living in right now is intentional chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very intentional chaos. From 1995 to 2005, there were denialists
Mhm.
who still did not think that the internet was going to last.
Yeah.
Streaming wasn't even a concept. Well, it was a concept. I came up with a concept that would end up becoming on-demand, TiVo, less remote, and eventually streaming,
Yeah.
which was just the idea that if you use the internet to have a central repository to allow people to log in whenever they want and see things that are already collected up, then you can get rid of that whole time parameter where 8 o'clock on Tuesday nights, you'll blah, 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 blah. I had this whole thing written out when I was in 7th grade just because I had learned, I mean, I grew up complete computer dork, taking computers apart, putting them back together in all different kinds of ways and reprogram. I was fluent in more programming languages by the time I was 18 than audible languages by 7. So the idea was there, but between 95 and 2005, there were still people that didn't think that, the internet would
Yeah.
last.
That'll be sustainable.
Oh my God, were they wrong? And the world that existed before, it's almost unimaginable unless you lived it, saw it, and understood it. And I tie back to this so many different times. Whoever it was that let Rage Against the Machine slip through either knew what they were doing or had no idea what they were doing by allowing anybody, including a psycho like me, to find out what the American Indian movement was and Leonard Peltier, and even think about considering, oh my God, is there a possibility that the FBI isn't always telling the truth?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Right? How scary.
That doesn't sound right. So now, where the internet is not only a thing, but central repositories where we can play back newscasts at newscasters and say, no, no, no.
Yeah.
Politicians, no, 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 hold on a second. Word for word, you just said the same thing, released at the same time. Did you know that you did that? Times 68?
Yeah.
All 68 of you didn't realize you were doing that same thing at the same time. No authenticity. And I think the cool thing is nowadays people can sniff out a lack of authenticity, so quick.
Yeah. I think and we were talking about this before too, it just takes a certain level of care to look for it, which doesn't exist in a
that's
huge population.
fair.
That's getting into a different conversation.
No, that's fair. Completely true also. Yeah. And those who don't want to look for it because they're pretty comfortable with what they know right now.
Oh, yeah.
It all sort of makes sense. I've got it arranged nicely. Do you know the show IT Crowd?
Yes.
Love that show.
Yeah.
Graham Linehan is an absolute genius comedy writer. I just reminded myself of an instance within IT Crowd where Jen is explaining to Roy, who's walked in and realized that her laptop is just filled with viruses just everywhere, and he hasn't seen them in forever. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, stop moving stuff around. I had it how I like it. Yeah. And it's like, but all of that is bad. Not only should you not have it arranged the way you like it, you need to get rid of all of that. It's all messing up what you're trying to do here. It's breaking your program, but also clouding up.
But that's what she's comfortable with.
But that's comfortable. Yeah. My God, it works just the way I need it to.
Yeah, that's like my job for the last 12 years.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, your actual professional, the way that you pay your bills and, appease the IRS or whatever, is IT.
Yeah.
So how do you square that one?
Yeah, I must have conned my way in somehow. I I will say I did very well coming from having a degree from art college and graduating, and I was making pretty good money because I had done IT for the college I went to. I was always into computers, like yourself, as a hobby, and then it just became strangely kind of a side profession and then a profession. I knew I would never be able to pay bills with a BA in creative writing. So I've been doing
It's
IT professionally since 2008.
it's more useful than a BA in creative dance.
Unless you, yeah, sure, yeah.
I mean,
Unless you're going to Juilliard,
some
afterwards.
people make it work.
Yes, they do.
Some people.
Yes. But I would not be able to. So yeah, I mean, I've been paying the bills with IT for a very long time. I'm a director at IT now, but it is a job.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm pretty good at it. I've done well, and I think I will say that most of my progression and success in the career is just because I'm good at talking with people and sort of that emotional intelligence
Yeah.
versus like actual IQ, which I think a lot of people will say plays a greater part in career progression than any other kind of standard test.
Always.
Yeah.
So you're very comfortable asking people if they've turned it off and on again
Oh yeah. And I've worked with,
without making them feel belittled or talked down
unless
to.
I really want to, but yes. But no, and I've worked for companies big and small too. So I've worked with all the personalities, So but yeah, again, I've been at companies where there hasn't been much going on, and I've been able to like come up with creative stories and had time to write notebooks, because some environments you're working nonstop, some environments you're waiting for something to break, and in those environments,
Oh, I'm familiar with that.
yeah, in those environments, you got to find ways to pass the time. You can't always be doing the next thing to better yourself in an office environment because there are some walls you're going to hit where no matter how hard you try, you're feeding that machine essentially,
Yeah.
and it's not helping you, it's helping them.
Yeah.
So there was a balance there. I mean, going back to one of my first IT jobs, I remember designing like a D&D campaign
Awesome.
while I was basically working there. I was able to get my job done perfectly fine, but I had plenty of time to design a campaign that I was able to run. And this is back before many adult responsibilities like having a kid, and
Sure.
you're able to play a campaign for 7-8 hours on a weekend day and not have to worry about anything else.
I'm working on one with Mark Michael Adams right now. We're 3 months of every other Monday for 4 to 6 hours in. Yeah, very, very excited to see where that one goes. But that's like a lot of little story along with a lot of long story,
Nice.
along with that not entirely prescripted world of D&D, but using all of those elements that are laid out before us. And that's the part of there's so much fun to be done when somebody else sets a stage and a setting and you just get to play with
Yeah.
what's all there, but
I think
make
that,
it
that
your own.
comes to that whole creative and collaborative part of that. It's collaborative storytelling is what D&D is.
Truly, yeah.
And I've done, back when I was designing that first D&D game, that was D20 modern or D20 future, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So that's 3.5 rules and not traditional D&D. It was all futuristic, like Firefly-esque.
That's awesome.
And
We're really getting deep into it now.
Oh, I know,
for all
right?
those non-D&D people.
But again, it was for me. It was world building, which I always find enjoyable in the creative writing process when
Yeah.
I'm designing something. So that is like it's an exercise in storytelling even.
Truly, absolutely.
Again, you don't have to be a D&D nerd to at least understand some of those concepts. I know. I'm trying to think of the actress. Deborah Ann Waller, I think is her name.
Deborah Ann Wall?
Wall, maybe?
I think it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wall.
From Daredevil?
Yes, I know she's a big D&D.
No kidding.
Person. Yeah, like huge. She knows like Matt Mercer, and she like a lot of different
Oh, that's
peripheries
awesome.
that she's part of. But in an interview that she had with John Bernthal, Punisher.
Yep.
in like a good like 10-minute span, she was able to get him to actually understand what D&D was, mostly because she's very eloquent and very well versed. But she was basically talking about how it's storytelling. That's what
Yeah.
it is, and it's not about winning the game. It's about having characters pass through a moment in time, and you're enjoying their journey, but you're also writing that journey as you go.
Simultaneously living your life as though you're living a life that you're making up.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And so the dungeon master, not to get too buried
You
into it,
fucking nerd.
I think everybody should check it out because it's a lot of fun and it's really cool. But the dungeon master is really that overarching storyteller who's leading you through, but that collaborative participant that is, while simultaneously living in their own life and
Yeah.
bringing the things that they think are interesting. The story becomes really excellent when they start thinking more like the character that they're portraying.
Yeah.
How would they see it? How they interact? So now you are your own mini director for this person.
That's how I do it. I mean, that's how I run games, and that's how I hope that other people run them, because that's what you're getting lost in it, and that's what makes it
Yeah.
enjoyable. And again, it's like the whole role playing idea. Besides it being like an RPG that you're just playing to win, you're role playing it because you're trying to get into a character and then just sort of lose yourself in that, and you're not doing it certain things to play by the rules or anything. You're doing it because you think that's what the character would do.
Yeah.
But
Well, hopefully taking it to the next level, because if every session does not end with you gaining at least one inspiration point, I consider it a failure.
oh no.
I need those inspiration points. Somehow changing everything in the way that it gets looked at and blending things and combining things. I don't want to give too much away, but Goliaths and mountain dwarfs,
All right.
they exist near to each other.
Nice.
From a human perspective, stuff happens.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, I it's funny that all kind of ties back just to how we create story, but also in how we take it in and just sort of how we digest it, I guess.
What humans do with ideas and story elements are I think, going to be very different than what AI does with story and human elements. And it's, granted, extremely novice right now, even though it's only a couple of years old. Talking about it like it's a living thing, which I'm pretty sure it already is.
It's close.
Well, close. Would you, if you were a superior being to humans and you had already come to be, would you let them know? No. Not until
No.
you absolutely need to. Why would you?
Yeah.
But the way that I think that it would look at things would be circumstantially different or unique, not given the fact that all of the ideas and decisions that you've been presented with and all of the unique situations that you've lived inform who you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And had you lived a different life, specifically you would be a different person based on all of the other information and all of the other circumstances and decisions that you've made. You'd be you, but you wouldn't be this you. You'd
Right.
be a completely different you if you had been born in a completely different family at slightly different time in a different region with different people that you're interacting with. You just put yourself together differently because all of your ideas are different.
Right.
If AI just gobbles up literally everything that's ever been thought, said, and done, then how can it possibly be unique to any specific human experience if it's compounded with all human experience?
Correct. It isn't.
There's no fresh idea.
No, there isn't. It is just regurgitating everything that's ever been, essentially put into its periphery.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that I think it is in some aspects a very good tool, but it just doesn't replace,
AGI becomes the intellectual in the room who knows literally everything, has been all over the world, and freaking nobody wants to listen
Yeah,
to.
yeah, that's the know-it-all that nobody wants in the room. Yeah, that's exactly what it
Could
is.
you shut up?
I feel like it was it Lewis Black? He's talking of, this is like an old bit of his, where he's talking about how America tends to be the most, this is going back years ago, but before, where we are right now, but America being the most obnoxious person in the room, coming in the room like, I'm the best motherfucker ever here, and you know what? Everyone else would want to just kill that person,
Yeah.
basically. But it's the idea of the one obnoxious guy who thinks they're the best at everything. That's basically what, yeah, you're equating as that
Yeah.
that AI.
That's really close to a Joe Rogan joke
is
also, which is the people that naturally rise to the top are not the smartest, because the smartest people are always going, no, I'm not the smartest. This person is a smart. They lack confidence. The person who rises to the top is the confident idiot who goes, I know what to do.
Well, it's like people who, it's like the difference between parents who think they're doing awesome to parents that worry they're going to screw up their kids. The parents that think that they're awesome are usually the really shitty parents.
Yeah.
And the parents that are usually constantly worried that they're screwing up their kids are probably doing a much, much better job.
Yeah.
Because they're aware enough to see that their foibles and their flaws and try to improve them. Whereas there's the parent that thinks they're doing, their job is just the tits, and
Yeah.
their
They're
kids are just fucking nightmares.
And they're hanging over the kid all the time, trying to make sure they do exactly the right thing at exactly the right time. And the kid turns out to be a basket case who shoots up a Baskin Robbins.
Right. So, I mean, we are always impressed with our kid by the fact that, by comparison, other kids his age are like feral monsters,
Less adjusted.
and we're like, you know what, doing pretty good.
Yeah.
But at the same right, we're like, but we're always not helicopter parents, but we take the idea that there's always something we could probably be doing better, trying to not, be our parents, which is hard. But it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, the people who are the least loud about their own achievements or what they're doing are usually the ones that aren't on top. They're the ones that are quietly trying to get their job done as well as they can, rather than boasting that they're doing the best at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're constantly reinforcing how good you are at something, you're generally not in the woodshed. You're not doing the work. You're riding on past things. You're not tearing yourself down. And I think there's a big issue with people not willing to tear themselves down, or simply divorce themselves from their ideas and let ideas float down the river that don't serve anymore, or that are just wrong.
Well, it's for people that fail upwards.
Failing upwards is just such a problem right now. And that's, I think, coming to an end. The failing upwards thing, as long as you put a screen, not a screen, but a tiny little camera connected to a screen in front of it, and you can make people giggle, you have been doing well. Like, those are super popular TikTok, super popular YouTuber. Not all of them, obviously. Stop being extremists. Not everything is everyone. But in general, a lot of the people that have become very famous over the last 10, 15 years contribute nothing to the human experience. They don't have anything insightful or useful to say. They're going to disappear quickly. They have no career after it unless they pivot hard right now, which they can. But once you've stacked up a huge amount of nothing, your sophomore slump is going to be devastating.
Oh, yeah.
Because knock that one out of the park again, not using some you fell into it kind of a formula, because you can't just do that over and over again.
Yep.
You're a failure once, okay, that's fine. Pick yourself up. If you're a failure twice and you don't pick yourself up, what are you doing for the rest of your life?
These days, something else. OnlyFans.
I hope you have good-looking feet.
Sell those puppies. But that's the thing. Again, this is going back to the age thing, where being a YouTuber is now like considered old, because TikTok is still the current trend. But I was talking about this with somebody the other day, thinking of sort of those pioneering YouTubers. I don't know if you're familiar with Angry Video Game Nerd.
Angry video game. That sounds super familiar.
So Angry Video Game Nerd, James Rolfe is his actual name. I'm pretty sure his first videos predate YouTube. So he's you could consider him.
That's why.
So he's I would say he's probably your age. So a couple years older than me. So of your more
Yeah.
of your generation than mine. But I would consider him sort of the grandfather of YouTubers. Again, never got huge. I mean, I assume he still makes some revenue.
Does fine.
Yeah, I know today with algorithms and stuff, you have to have to have 10, 20, 30 million subscribers to really do well.
Yeah.
But he's been doing the same thing in the same style, but he's true to it in such a way where he's just a shit-talking guy who talks about old retro video games. And he's been doing it since about 2000, I don't know.
2002.
Yeah, around then. I remember being in college. So it was early to mid 2000s he started releasing videos, and he still does it today, which is just blows my mind. But in a sea of things that require so little attention, his stuff sort of falls off. He still has a very hardcore fan base.
Dedicated following.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And me included. I mean, I every once in a while I'll catch up with one of his videos, and they're still very funny. But
I'm definitely going to go look it up.
oh yeah,
after
you
this.
you
Angry
would
Video Game
enjoy.
Nerd. Welcome back, everybody who just hit pause and went to look up Angry Video Game Nerd.
So yeah, totally worth it. And you've got years and years of content that he's been making. But you've got stuff that comes and goes so quickly now. Granted, the amount of audience is insane
Yeah.
because, I mean, TikTok as a platform is obviously international, and everyone with a phone and a pulse can watch it. Again, I could never quite get into
Or
it myself.
contribute.
Yeah. But yeah, it happened. It's so quick that the half-life of that popularity is a mere blip
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things. Whereas, at least for me, people that have been doing that kind of entertainment in a much longer form, and also has more content to it, will be forever in my eyes. It's that sort of YouTube royalty where you have those few original people that kind of stayed true, never really sold out, so to speak. Yeah, sure, they'll take sponsors because that's the YouTube game, but it's their content hasn't changed.
Yeah.
They're still, dropping F-bombs and talking about old Nintendo games and weird, elusive things that people, younger than me have no idea what they're talking about.
Which really, who cares? That's in the long run. That's I would say more of an advantage.
Yeah.
There's a backlog of content that is almost endless at that point. There's always something to listen to because you made so many of them.
Yeah.
It's got its own fingerprint. It's you. And then that makes the long run of what you are and who you are, I wouldn't say more marketable, but recognizable and trustworthy.
Yeah, in the sea of kind of clickbait stuff these days, stuff that's older actually seems more unique because
Interesting,
it
yeah.
isn't, even though it's been out and it's essentially been done. I mean, he's been doing it all this time. That seems more unique than stuff coming out every second today. I can't quite explain why. I just that it could be just the breadth and how much. We talk about how much content there is just
Yeah.
in general, because it all kind of looks the same.
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
I
feels
know.
the same.
I know what you're saying. Reaction videos aren't new. And there's reaction videos to reaction videos of reaction videos.
Yeah, which
And
that's a whole other thing.
They're
But
not,
yeah,
they're not doing anything unique. They're
No.
not adding anything to it. They just know that if they play a video right here and go,
yeah. Well, that's
like
the
it's
whole.
it's not interesting. You're not doing anything cool.
No,
You're going to hold my attention for maybe a second or two until I realize you're just one of these idiots who does reaction videos and points at the other side of the screen every now and then.
Yeah, and there's that other thing too. And I mean, it's not the worst thing. I just don't quite understand the draw, which is the YouTubers that specifically watch movies that they've never seen before, and it's them watching it, and you pay for their Patreon or whatever to watch the entire movie
with them.
with them. It's like, this is the reason why I don't watch movies with most people, because they talk for the entire thing.
Yeah,
So-
but also just get a friend.
You're right. But
Watch a movie.
so that's their revenue, is basically watching movies and having them talk over them. But that's literally a
Man.
thing. There's like so many YouTubers where that's their entire draw.
I feel bad for them. I hope that they find something of meaning in life, something with some substance, because there's so much more. I feel bad for them, but at the same time, maybe they're just giving those absolute incel, no personality, socially inept people who just hide in their house. That's their buddy.
I think it is. And if that's what they need, then that's and but then they found their market, you know.
My buddy and me. It's just you're
yeah.
literally carrying around your Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah.
Except it's in video form.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And again, people are probably you know, watching these videos on their phone, walking around, or when they should be, you know, looking at their environment. But
Yeah,
whatever.
and I don't want to yuck everybody's yum if that's the thing that you're into, is watching these types of things or engaging with them.
Yeah, sorry,
That's-
guys.
Do your thing, man. Everybody needs to get through this life whichever way they can. I just would implore you, start learning something. Like the time that we spend, and I'm guilty of it. I'm right now learning music theory and Japanese just to keep myself out of
for you.
algorithms. Just something. Learn something. Pick something up. Pick something extremely difficult up and force yourself to do it.
My wife and I are learning Spanish right now. Yeah, and that's the thing is take a break from doom scrolling, you know.
Oh,
But yeah, learning a skill. Chris Sumner, my main voice actor, the main character of the podcast, has made it an effort to not do that anymore. And now he's been a singer, guitar player, does piano. He's been in a couple of bands as well.
Cool.
So he's got a musical background. He's been teaching himself how to do sound design and music editing much better. So he's been watching videos and putting it to use. He's helping me actually design the theme song for the second season.
awesome.
And he also did the ending credits music and the intro music for the first season as well.
I was wondering who had done all that.
Yep, that was him. Yeah, it's that, do something productive. Do something that enhances you as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop just consuming. I think the United States has proven over the last 80 years simply being a consumer is not that great. Be a producer. Make something.
Yeah, right?
Contribute. You only have so long here. I want to get up on a soapbox and start telling people, but that is such an important message, that the amount of doom scrolling can be very equitably compared to the amount of heroin. And in
Same
that,
thing.
if you do it, you're only going to want to do it more and more. It is killing you.
You gotta chase that dragon.
God, it is killing you, and it'll never be as good as it was 5 minutes ago. You will do it more and more and more.
Yeah.
Stop. Learn something. Make something. The best things in life come because you first made the thing. I say this constantly. You need to make the thing first.
And I will say that I am occasionally guilty of it. And it's, you know, I have challenges with like stress and anxiety. I mean, a big surprise. I mean, it's sometimes people have that, and that is sort of that quick reward and dopamine, but it doesn't help you.
It doesn't help.
No, it's
God, it does not
it's
help.
that quick fix. Again, it's the
If it's what you need to get through this moment specifically, if you're literally offing yourself, if you don't get just a tiny little bit take the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
But
yeah, find the long solution.
this is not a long-term fix, man.
No, it is not.
You just get it's the methadone clinic approach. You get through it, but get past it. You have to get past it. Please, everybody. That's our one PSA for the day.
Yeah, right?
We weren't supposed to have any message. This is just a conversation. But yeah, I think we see eye to eye on that one.
Yeah, we do.
And in a creator space, that is something that, like, we're not saying don't consume at all. consume with benefit
Yeah.
only, and guard your time. I think that's something that can't possibly be stressed enough. Time is the most valuable thing you will ever have.
Yeah.
And if you are working to get a lot of money, but that money doesn't serve you in getting you more time, it's a waste. It's a giant waste. So while you're here, if you have enough money to continue doing the things that matter, that's enough money.
Yes.
I can't remember who said it, but somebody said there's a certain point where you get enough money. When you get enough money that you don't have to like worry and look at the menu.
Yeah.
When you're ordering, you don't go out every single night and order everything and run up huge bar tabs. But if you can go to a restaurant and sit down and not look where the prices are and just go, yeah, I could go for a steak and potatoes tonight and just get the steak and potatoes. When you're that rich, that's enough.
Yeah. There's that like bell curve of like socioeconomic like wealthiness where you can be like, and there's not any real worries anymore. You know, obviously that curve is now changing, but you're absolutely right. There is a point where you're like, yes, the first world worries are pretty much non-existent.
But when you get there, if you don't know that comfort is the ultimate poison, you're in for trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
I know people who are pretty wealthy, and wealthy people are odd.
Yeah.
Like they have strange like
They live
ticks
different
and
lives.
habits. They do. They do live different lives. But they look at. It's funny what they find very specifically strange about either how other people live or just how they perceive money. Where it's like they'll complain about little things that obviously are so not important to them money wise, but they'll have 3 houses, but they'll nickel and dime you over little things. Again, it's strange habits that they
It's how
get.
they,
Yeah,
some of them, that's how they stay. I'm very familiar with some
frugality.
wealthy folks. Yeah, but once you are in that area, so much changes that you hold on to little things that remind you of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's being that frugal person. That's part of it. The other part of being rich and having money is you don't get rich by writing checks, and nobody just gives money away. So if you do have a bunch of money, you probably didn't get it by just giving a whole bunch of money away. Unless you're Mr. Beast and you know that there's a benefit to the algorithm, tying back to YouTube people.
Yes.
But yeah, no, not to try and run up a sob story for people who have a ton of money, but one thing that people who don't have any money have no concept of is you don't know who any of your friends are. You have any idea how alienating it is to get to a point where you have enough money that everybody knows you have that money?
Yeah.
You have no idea. Everybody's angling. There's piranhas and sharks and barracuda. Every single thing that could try and bleed you of everything you have, they're after you.
There's a lot of rap songs about that.
Constantly, yeah. You know why? Because there's a giant contrast that they go through when they go from abject poverty with no hope at all, and then all of a sudden just flush with cash.
Yep.
And they're perceptive people. They got out of where they are because they're perceptive.
Yes.
And so obviously now that they're rich, they're going to realize there's a whole lot of stuff that comes along with that that's just not anticipated.
Yeah.
Losing friends and always having people that are acquainted to you trying to get something from you is just, it's got to be the most time-consuming and annoying thing. I can understand why people drive an old beat-up truck and don't let anybody know that they have any money at all.
Yeah, the stealth wealth.
Stealth wealth is like, that's the New Hampshire way.
Well, it's like Christian Bale. He drives around in like a mid-2000s Toyota Tacoma.
Keanu Reeves sitting on a subway.
Right.
Why?
I mean, on the flip side, Keanu Reeves does have like, has his own motorcycle line, but yes, he still mingles in the real world.
He still took almost $6 million and gave it out to a bunch of people that worked on a movie that didn't make enough money.
Yeah.
He still took tens of millions of dollars and built a cancer facility for his sister.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
He's probably the best human being, the most fully realized, actualized human being that's ever set foot on this planet.
Also a vampire. Seen that man age?
Was that just a meme? that's going around?
That's an old one, but yeah.
Well, but he played, a vampire.
Yes.
He also played the boyfriend of some vampire, but like the girlfriend of the. I don't remember the movie, but
yeah.
he's loosely connected in that way.
Yes.
But then also, you can't really tell how old he is.
Yeah.
So he may be a vampire.
There's a couple actors.
But there's
like that.
there's a thing going around. I can't remember if somebody just fed it into AI and made it look like a really great movie that should be made. But there's something that's floating around right now that has people going, "Are they making a vampire movie and Keanu Reeves is the main vampire?" I want to find that because I'm sure it looks really good.
Yeah. Did you see Nosferatu?
I don't want to wrap before making sure you tell everybody all of however they can get in touch with you.
Sure.
If you want people in touch with you, follow you and see what's coming next. Definitely next season.
Yeah.
You're hoping to be kind of when?
So the second season of the podcast, I'm hoping is going to start going live maybe mid-August this year. So I'm on a much quicker timeline than I was before, because last time it was 3 years before
Oh, yeah.
anything came out. So yeah, by about August. But you can find the just A Long Walk podcast at SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. It's got a Facebook page, but it's almost non-existent these days. But it's still there. But yeah, there's a number of different ways to find it. And yeah, we're hoping to have a kind of a much more, I'm going to say bigger, but more of a fully realized second season, because it's going to be a much wider cast, more personalities, such as yours truly over here.
I hope it make the cut. I'm nervous about this email you mentioned.
But and that was the cool thing too, is the having more people finding it, and having people who actually do their own podcasts as side characters and cast members, because it's you and two other people who are also going to be in the second season, who are also podcasters. So
No kidding.
so yeah, I mean you made the grade, so I mean,
Cool.
Spoilers, but there's two others that have their own pretty successful podcasts. So it's cool to being able to do that kind of cross collaboration.
Yeah. Well, it's not just one medium that it happens in. It should be all of them.
Yeah, true.
Well, it's been a blast talking with you.
Yeah.
I'm happy that I got to sit down and learn more about you. As I said at the beginning, we just met recently, and I haven't known a heck of a lot about you. I'm glad I got the opportunity to talk with you.
Likewise.
It definitely informed where your creative process comes from, and though we didn't dive too deeply into the nitty-gritties because it typically gets a little bit boring.
Yeah.
Knowing what's informing the story creating and all of that is awesome. I even more get to look forward to what's happening in season 2. Anybody that wants to follow my stuff at S. Joseph Haney, basically everywhere. Cursed on Earth is working on all sorts of stuff right now this summer. As mentioned, there is the D&D, which is going to be a interactive play along. You can get the book when it comes out, read what we've put together, but also take all of the characters from our D&D journey and get your own character sheet and play along in that same world. I don't know, there's all kinds of stuff I should be probably mentioning. Like, if you want to support Seacoast Entertainer and what we're doing, by all means, Venmo us at Seacoast Entertainer. We have a lot of shows and a lot of good coming out. The website will, when this comes out, have launched, seacoastentertainer.org, for the calendar of everything that's going on in the area, and as well a great place to find actual journalism on the arts and entertainment world of the Seacoast. Yeah, I hope to see everybody out there. Love y'all. See ya.
Here they are, Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.